Thank you so much for pushing play. This is MG Govia. I'm an education outreach liaison here at Okie811. You're listening to Digging Deep, our podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking with Chrisstovall from Texas811. We have lots of stuff to talk to you about. I want you all to take this moment before we even get started. Hit your favorite button. Make sure you're following us so that you can stay tuned with us for future webinar or future podcasts and future opportunities to follow and see what all is going on with Okie811. So today, I'm pleased to announce I have Chris on the podcast with us, and we're going to dive into quite a few different topics. We're going to begin just kind of give everybody a little idea of who Chris is so that we can talk about what we're doing. So Chris, before we dive into Texas and Okie811 and the differences, can you tell us a little bit about you and who you are?
Sure. Thanks, MG. I'm so glad to be here. Excited to be on your show. So my name is Chris Stovall, President and CEO of Texas811. Also co-founder and CEO of a company called Line-Scape. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show, I think. But I've been with Texas811 for 18 and a half years. I grew up in this business. I've held every role that you can imagine within the company. I started off as an agent. Wow. Handling phone calls, processing tickets. I was an assistant training coordinator, then ran training, assistant contact center manager, then ran the center operations, then a director of operations, executive vice president, COO, and I've been the president now for about 6 years.
Awesome. Well, it's good to know. In 8 years, I could be executive director. So
That's
we
right.
won't tell Susan because I don't want to let her know. But 6 years might be the right time. We'll see. Yeah. So as you probably know, Chris, I started the same thing. I started back in the contact center, taking phone calls and processing locate requests as well, and just kind of hopped around looking for my perfect niche. And I'm happy to say I'm in a good spot doing the education outreach for Okie811. One thing that has happened over the years of getting into this position is learning more and more about the similarities between our different states and what we do, and the differences between our states and how we do it. And so I kind of want to give our listeners an idea of that. So obviously Texas is a much bigger state. You have a lot more activity, and then Texas has been such an innovator and a leader in the industry that you'll have some really cool things going on. So let's just start talking ticket volume, because that's usually an idea of how big and how busy we are. So Okie811, we surpassed 1 million tickets for the first time in our history last year. We did just a little over 1.2 million tickets last year. So where does that compare to Texas811?
So we did 4.4 million, almost 4.5 million tickets last year in Texas.
Yeah, to our listeners, I already knew the answer, and just knowing it was 4 times as many, because we were pretty excited when we finally got to 1.2 million. We've been doing a lot to improve the automation, how easy it is to put in a locate request for our excavators and homeowners, and we're getting there with that. Through that and proper messaging as well. Obviously, Texas just has that much population, that much more size to deal with that. But as a leader in the industry, Texas takes on other states' phone calls as well, correct?
Yeah, that's right, MG. And I appreciate the kind words, but I will say that as much as you consider Texas811 a leader and an innovator, we look to Oklahoma as well. You guys at Okie811 are doing some really cool stuff. This podcast, this show is one of those things. But you guys are a leader and innovator as well. And so I think one of the beautiful things about our industry is that we can lean on each other and borrow ideas from each other. And so we look to you guys just as much as you may look to us. But
awesome.
So in Texas, that's our headquarters, and our core business is Texas, but we run the 811 systems for South Dakota and West Virginia.
Okay.
And then we help out with after hours, people want to close the doors at 5. We also help out with Spanish language calls for New Mexico, Mississippi, Georgia, also Oklahoma is one as well. So we're kind of all over as far as how we're helping others in any way that we can.
That's fantastic. And I agree. The partnerships that have been developed through the fact that we share the same software, the ability to collaborate. Like I said, I love stealing ideas from other people. Texas has had some good ones. I take ideas from other states as well when they become available to us. And I see some really good marketing opportunities, some really good education stuff, as well as just policy and procedures. So one of the things that you mentioned that we get to talk about is Line-Scape. And so I understand it's pretty much just registering abandoned lines. Could you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so I'll give you the history kind of.
Okay.
Line-Scape today exists as a separate entity from Texas811, but it wasn't always thought of in that way. So about 5 years ago, it's been a long time in the making. About 5 years ago, we at Texas811 started looking to what we thought could be the future of this industry. Mm-hmm. And honestly, at the time, 5 years ago, we thought we were looking 15 or 20 years into the future. We thought it was going to be this, kind of really futuristic thing. But the idea we had was the future of digital, right? And could our industry embrace a digital future? And so we started a pilot project, and the basic idea was we wanted to be able to see an underground line location on an iPhone or a smartphone or a tablet, right? And so we worked on that project, and we proved the concept, and we got pretty excited about that. And so we started kind of working on the background, thinking that we were going to be way ahead of really being ready to deploy that for many, many years down the road. As we got further along in the project, we started to see like the technologies all around us just really moving in that direction. And we got excited, like, well, maybe this is going to happen way faster than we originally thought. And as we moved the project further along, we started exploring, okay, if we actually do this, what does that look like? And long story short, the headline is, it was outside of our core business at Texas811. Our core business is defined in our state law. And as long as we stay within that core business and follow what the state law requires us to do, we're doing our job, and we have protections associated with that. And this felt like a little bit too far outside of our core business for our board of directors. Okay. But fortunately, they trusted me, and they also liked the idea, and so they gave me their blessing to go outside of Texas811 and see if we could make this a success. And so about 18 months ago, we did that. And again, the basic idea is, can we send digital information to an end user out in the field so they can see where the line is? And what made most sense to start with this was abandoned lines. It was a major issue and a big challenge for the industry. And, I want to back up a little bit on that. I say it made sense to go into abandoned lines. Really how that happened is, I want to give a nod to Kinder Morgan, because they saw the opportunity there, not me. We had built this software, and, we were still working out a way to deploy it. And Kinder Morgan saw this opportunity, and they came to me and said, can you make this work for abandoned lines? We have a challenge in our industry around abandoned lines, and this could be a great solution. So really, I got to give credit to Kinder Morgan and Kirk for seeing that opportunity and pushing this forward. It's because of them that we've actually brought this to an operational product today. Awesome.
You're right. Industry-wide, nationwide, abandoned lines is something that has been a sore spot, because excavators will go out to a project, they call them to locate, the operators are coming out, marking the lines that they're own and maintain, and a lot of times those abandoned lines, they may fall off all the operators' radar and nothing happens, and the excavator finds it the old-fashioned way with their excavator and then it's an issue. And being able to get that knowledge to them ahead of time because of the registered assets, or registered abandoned lines, I should say, does make a lot of sense. How has deployment gone so far?
That's a great question. So I was nervous about that, to be honest. We didn't have a great way of educating everyone about this. I mean, you know how challenging that is. And we, as 811 centers, we're always trying to educate and bring awareness, but to reach everyone and to feel like you've actually accomplished that it's really challenging. And so we made the decision, instead of trying to do an education campaign or a marketing campaign, to just start delivering what we call the digital locate on the abandoned line. Just start delivering that directly to the excavator. And then I called the excavators personally after they received them and asked, hey, how did that work? Did you like it? You know, was it good? And so I was really surprised with their feedback, because it was just 100% positive. And I was honestly worried that, you know, maybe they'll think it's a nuisance or it'll be a bother to them. And they love it. I mean, it really helped in the scenario that you described earlier. But another scenario that's, you know, equally as bad and maybe even a little scarier is they call in their 811 ticket. They get 4 utilities identified on the ticket. They go out and they see 4 marks on the ground. Maybe they even pothole. They identify where these 4 pipes are located. If they don't know about abandoned lines in that scenario, now let's say one of those lines they've identified is actually an abandoned line. That means there's a live buried line somewhere that hasn't been marked. And that's the really scary scenario. And this has helped a lot with that as well, because it gives them that awareness. Okay, I got 4 on my ticket, and I also now know that there's an abandoned line in this general vicinity as well.
That makes sense. Okay. With the deployment, how is participation going so far?
Yeah, so this was another area of surprise for me. I'm not knowledgeable on marketing and how all that's done. So when I saw the numbers at first, we had a 25% click-through rate, and I thought, oh, that's kind of disappointing. You know, it's a little bad. I didn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
And then I started talking to some people who do email for a living, and they're like, dude, that's really good. Like,
yeah, 1 out of every 4. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our click-through rate is 25%. And the other really cool thing that we found is once an excavator, we can see the email address that clicks on it. Once they click on it once, they continue to use it into the future. So that's another good
that's really cool.
Metric.
Very cool. So what's the future of Line-Scape? What's next?
Well, so a few things. One is we started this with Kinder Morgan in Texas, and our hope is to be a solution across the nation, right? And whether that's Line-Scape being a part of that, or whether that's us giving the blueprint to how we accomplish this in Texas. I talked at the CGA and a couple of different committees, and I've been talking to people in different states about the idea, and I'm happy to just share how we've accomplished it and the success rate from that, but also the software that we've developed works. It integrates across different platforms. You mentioned earlier, Oklahoma and Texas use the same software. So kind of once you integrate with one, you can integrate with all of them. And so our hope is to expand the offering as far as we can go and continue to provide this value. That's what drives me, is feeling like I've done something that's made a difference. And this was an area that people were trying to solve, and it's causing some problems, and that we made a difference here means a lot. And then also we've added some other abandoned facility owners as well to the mix. So Kinder Morgan was our first, but we've added a few others since then. Good. And our hope is that we can get every abandoned facility registered and notified.
That would be cool. So that's outstanding, because a lot of facility operators listen to our podcast. So if they want to pursue Line-Scape, do they need to contact OK811? Do they need to find Line-Scape somewhere? What's the next step for those who are looking to register their abandoned lines?
Yeah, so great question. The short answer is they can email me, Chrisstovall at Line-Scape.com, CHRISSTOV, like Victor, ALL. But also, reach out to your local 811 system. It was important to me from the get-go that I not just take it for granted that we can operate in any state. So, I've called Susan personally, and any other state that we've ever thought about operating in, I talk to the executive director or CEO first and make sure that they're comfortable with it, that it makes sense for them, and that, get their blessing and also get their feedback on the right way to do it for that state. So definitely the state could be a path, or you could email me directly and I'd be happy to contact that state's executive director.
Awesome. Well, that kind of ties into what we were about to talk about, is just as far as our big purpose, what we're all about. But before I dive into that, for everybody who worried about not being able to catch that email address, we're going to have that in your descriptions, make it available to anybody. So don't worry about it. If you don't hit rewind right now, we're going to finish up here in just a moment. So I love the fact that whether it's Line-Scape or what we do specifically for our contact center, is that we understand the big purpose of 811, and that is obviously going to be excavator safety and damage prevention. And I remember when I got into this role, I was very, very damage prevention focused, right? Because the people over my shoulder are our facility operators. They're the one paying our bills. They're the ones that, oversee the one call. And we finally got to where I'm in this position. I want to do everything right by them. And it wasn't too long that I figured out that my focus was backwards, because all the facility operators are more worried about excavator safety. Because if we stress excavator safety, that means they're not hitting anything. That means that the damage is prevented, and my focus is to be shifted. And ever since that shift, oh man, this job is more rewarding, because I don't think of like interruptions in services and bottom line dollars or anything like that. It's, hey, I'm saving a life. I'm educating someone who may need to know the tolerance zone and may need to understand the importance of verifying that underground facility before bringing in the heavy equipment, stuff like that. And so with that being said, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, all the states around us, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, we all focus on preventing damage with the focus on excavator safety. And I was wondering what that means to you, like as president and CEO of Texas811, what's your big picture?
Yeah, thank you for that, MG. And you and I are on the same page. I talk to every employee when they get hired at Texas811, and within their first week of hiring, and I cover our company core values, like welcome them on board and that sort of thing. But one of the things that I drive home from the very beginning is our purpose, why we exist. We have a mission statement, and our mission statement is to facilitate damage prevention, promote public safety, and protect the environment through stakeholder education and communication. That's a good mission, but it's kind of a mouthful, and and so it's also kind of it's hard to get inspired about. Maybe that's just for me, but it just feels a little wordy. So I shorten that to our purpose, why we exist. It is to protect billions of dollars of underground infrastructure and to get people home safely to their families every day, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly why we exist, is people go home safe to their families because of what we do. And, some of it, is in a contact center environment, right? And so we're handling calls to 811, but a lot of web traffic now as well. And people may come into this thinking that it's the typical contact center environment. And so I try to set the record straight there too and say, we're not selling steak knives over the phone or processing credit card applications. We are protecting lives.
Yeah.
And I think that means a lot to employees. they know what they're signing up for, and it gives them meaning and purpose of what they do every day.
Exactly. Nothing's more rewarding than going home at the end of your shift and know that you had an impact on the safety of others, whether it's our employees in our contact center processing those locate requests, or all the way to our accounting person taking bills, and just the functionality and the existence of 811. It protects people, and that's what we stress as well. I think it's a smart and common sentiment through all of 811 that we have a bigger purpose. So Chris, I appreciate you so much. You and I have run into each other at numerous conferences and opportunities, and to be able to talk to, whether it's presidents or CEOs or executive directors or whatever the leadership of any 811 is, and have conversations like this is inspiring to me. So I appreciate that tremendously, just to see that our leadership, no matter what state they're in, we all have the same focus and direction. So that's important to me. So thank you for that.
We want to ask you to subscribe to our podcast so that you can be the first to hear each new episode. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to follow the channel for not only our podcast, but also educational videos on Okie 811 services. Follow us on social media to know of upcoming educational events, such as Safety Days or our Expo, or to know the next time we may be hiring. Thank you for listening to Digging Deep, an Okie 811 podcast. After you subscribe, be sure to share.
So we're going to be wrapping up. What overall message or anything else that you want to add before we close out?
MG, I think this is one of the most exciting times to be a part of the industry. I really do believe that. And I've been doing this for 18 and a half years. I've seen a lot of positive things done, a lot of progress made, a lot of big things accomplished by the partnerships that we have and the way that we all work together. But I have never sensed the change that is coming like I do now. I just feel like we have so much momentum, so much opportunity to make a big difference and increase safety in ways that we have never done in the past. And so I'm just excited to be a part of it and be along for the ride. I think you guys are doing some awesome things, and we challenge each other because the states, we all talk and we see what others are doing. And there's just this excitement and movement right now that I have not seen before. And so the message that I would say to those that are listening or a part of this industry is, a tidal wave is coming of positive change, and we're about to make some real difference in this industry.
That is outstanding. And I'm going to be here along for the ride myself. It is a good time. I've never seen the communication and collaboration between all the states and CGA and all these other organizations work the way that they have in just the last 3 to 5 years. It just feels like tomorrow, like you said, just something's going to happen very soon. So I'm excited as well. So with that, listeners, I just, again, thank you, Chris, for joining us today to talk 811 between our states. And if our listeners are interested in about registering their abandoned lines, reach out to me, education@okie811.org, or Chris. He shared his email earlier. It's his first and last name at texas811.org. We'll have that in our descriptions. I appreciate everything that our listeners do to help keep Oklahoma safe. Thank you and have a great day.